Bang Dream, It's My Go is a hidden gem in the Bang Dream franchise. This anime has been hailed as a masterpiece for its painfully realistic characters, raw emotional power, and stunning musical performances. With its second season, Ave Mujika, on the horizon, today we'll explore the intricate details of this anime as both an appreciation of the first season and a prelude to what's coming. Spoiler alert. This video contains in-depth analysis and spoilers for the anime Bang Dream, It's My Go. So if you haven't watched the series yet, I highly recommend doing so before continuing. Let's dive into the first scene. We see Sakiko make her entrance right away. Her right hand is holding her bag, while her left hand is clenched into a fist. Since Sakiko isn't carrying an umbrella, she's walking briskly, overtaking the crowd. As soon as the door opens, almost everyone's eyes turn to Sakiko, who's just walked in. Only Soyo rushes over to her. Taki and Tamori turn their heads to look at her, but they don't move. Mutsumi doesn't even bother to turn around. This scene isn't just a one-off. It'll pop up again later. I'll gradually break down the logic behind each character's actions. In this shot, pay attention to Taki sitting against the wall. She's holding her phone in her right hand, propping up her right elbow with her left hand. But her eyes are side-eyeing Soyo and Sakiko. This posture is a way of expressing emotion. She's clearly not happy about something. Sakiko pushes away Soyo's hands, refusing to accept the towel she's offering, even though she's soaked from the rain. When do people reject kindness, especially from someone they know well? It's because she's here today to quit the band. She's here to let everyone down, so she can't accept any kindness now. And this kindness must be refused. It's a form of self-protection. From this, we can see that Sakiko's initial intention is to leave the band herself. The camera pans to show everyone's reactions: shocked, dissatisfied, unresponsive, trembling. This is when Soyo starts to take action. Come on, sit down for a bit. Let's talk this out calmly. She's trying to ease the tension. Sakiko shakes her head, refusing. At this point, Taki puts down her phone and folds her arms. A defensive posture. From here on, we can see Soyo's judgment and high emotional intelligence. Sakiko, who won't even sit down to talk, is in a state of refusing communication. If you went up to her and asked directly, "Why do you want to quit the band? Why are you doing this?" Obviously, you wouldn't get anywhere. So Soyo's first probing question is a yes or no question. Is it something you can't tell us? Or is it because of us? It's my problem, and my alone, Sakiko answers. Having found the direction of the issue, Soyo launches her second move. Weren't you happy before? You said you wanted to do it again, didn't you? She starts reminiscing about happier times, using Sakiko's own visions of a bright future to shake her current resolve. This is a rhetorical persuasion technique. As long as Sakiko answers, she'll fall into Soyo's rhythm. But how does Sakiko respond? She jumps right out of it. She directly denies ever saying such things. I never said that. Whether she really didn't say it or is just pretending she didn't, she's at least expressing an attitude. I don't want to now. We need to remember that Soyo's goal is to stop Sakiko from leaving the band. She can't directly contradict her by saying, "You definitely said that on that day, at that time." So at this point, Soyo plays her second card, appealing to emotions. You're the core of the band. The band relies on the team you created. You have a responsibility to the team. The aim is to provoke Sakiko's guilt and pride. This statement definitely had an effect, which is why Sakiko's gaze becomes evasive. Sakiko's purpose today isn't to disband Krychik, but to leave Krychik alone. So this statement temporarily stabilizes the situation. But then Tomori speaks up. Are you really quitting? During the time Soyo was pulling strings, Tomori was actually in a state of shock. There's only one thought in her head. Sakiko is leaving. So at this moment, she speaks up to confirm. Are you really quitting? Are you really leaving? In communication, especially when you want to achieve your own goals, you shouldn't actively give others yes or no questions. Especially at this moment, if Sakiko hardens her heart and says firmly, yes, I'm quitting, then everything would be over. Note that Sakiko doesn't reply at this point. She's been shaken by Soyo's words. If the conversation continued further, it might have been possible to get Sakiko to open up. If it really got to that point, it would seem like they could persuade her to stay. Of course, that's just how it seems, because an even worse situation has already emerged.
ともりが聞いてるんだけど、てか無責任じゃない。なんで黙ってんの？滝ちゃんやめ。
The tension rises. Pressure builds up. Things are going south. So at this point, Soyo quickly tries to intervene. We can see that at this moment, Sakiko is actually in a state of internal struggle. She doesn't follow Tomori's words to say she's quitting, nor does she immediately refute Taki. Of course, she also doesn't reveal her motives. She just falls silent.
じゃあ迷惑かけないでやめてくれる？今日だって先子待ちで。滝ちゃん。
We were all waiting for you today. This statement is fundamentally wrong. If someone in team is always late, as a colleague, you can complain and say, why are you always late? Because it delays the project, everyone's waiting for you. It's okay to put pressure like that. But today, a colleague has come to resign, and you say this. Can you retain a colleague this way? It's the opposite. This approach is just wrong. So after Soyo interrupts Taki again, Sakiko finally speaks up.
私がいなくてもできたでしょ。はあ？練習したいならすればいいでしょ。全員揃わないとできないルールなんてありませんわ。人のせいにしないで。
Even if I'm not here, you can still practice. The project can still go on without me. Don't make excuses using other people. We can see that at this point, Sakiko's behavior is defensive. When a person starts making excuses for their mistakes, it shows they haven't reached the worst point yet. At least she hadn't directly said, yeah, it's because of me that the project stalled. Anyway, I won't be coming anymore, so I definitely need to quit and leave. Because nothing is worse than a dead heart. At least for now, Sakiko's hope is that she herself will leave, but Krychik will continue to operate normally. At this point, Tomori speaks up for the second time.
でも、さきちゃんがいないと甘ったれたことを言わないでちょうだい。ともりは特に練習しないといけないのに、今まで何をやってたんですの？
This time, Tomori means to say that if Sakiko's not there, she won't be able to continue. So at this point, Sakiko's rebuttal, don't say such selfish things, you're the one who needs more practice, still centers around the core idea that even if I'm not here, you should still be able to practice. Because Tomori has trouble singing, right? You can't sing, so that's a kind of selfishness. Because at this point, do you really need me to be there for you to have the courage to sing? Because Tomori and Sakiko have a deeper relationship, Sakiko's tone is the harshest at this point. But this statement was misunderstood by two people. Taki, seeing her secret crush being scolded, immediately decides to get even. So the situation escalates completely from here. Pressure's on. There's physical contact, pushing and shoving. Tomori was waiting for you. Does this statement from her help? It doesn't, because we know Sakiko is aware that Tomori is waiting for her, which is why she said, not talk like a spoiled child. Taki's statement is purely emotional output.
ちゃんと話し合おうよ。ね。せっかく楽しくやってきたんだから、むつみちゃんもそう思うよね。
At this point, the situation has reached this stage, and even Soyo can't salvage a Dutso. What she thinks of is to find that uninvolved fifth person to ease the tension. But is she really uninvolved? What awaits them?
私はバンド楽しいって思ったこと一度もない。
In a band of 5, one wants to quit, one is in conflict, one is withdrawn, and the last one has never been happy, completely killing any communication. With this, the first act ends. Now, let's collect ourselves and enter the second act, the arrival of Anon, the angel. Anon is about to check in. Generally, international flights allow 2 pieces of free checked luggage, each weighing up to 23 kilograms. We can see that most people are tourists or business travelers, usually with just 1 suitcase. But Anon is a student, so she has 2 large suitcases. She sighs. Her mood is low.
Sorry.
Then someone bumps into her and apologizes with a sorry. At this moment, Anon doesn't verbally respond. A simple no worries, it's okay, or even repeating sorry would have been fine. But Anon is in an insecure state. She doesn't even dare to give such a basic response. So she just makes a sound and says something in Japanese.
帰ろう。
中学では生徒会長だったんですね。
はい。こちらの学校でも積極的に動いて充実した高校生活を送りたいと考えています。
We notice that Anon is wearing glasses today. In fact, her nearsightedness is very mild, and she usually doesn't need glasses for class. Today is her transfer and school interview, and there might even be a written test. So, she's wearing glasses, partly for the exam needs, and partly to create the image of an excellent student. We'll see many scenes later where Anon can't see text clearly from a distance, so she'll squint and lean forward. Here's a possibility that viewers might easily overlook. Japanese and British junior and senior high schools have 3 terms per academic year: spring, autumn, and winter. But their graduation and enrollment times are different. In Japan, the academic year ends and junior high graduation is in March, with high school enrollment in April. While in the UK, the previous academic year ends around July, with the new term starting in September. This creates 2 possibilities. First, Anon went to the UK after graduating junior high, enrolled in September, studied for a few months, then returned to enter a new first year of high school.
内心もいいし、まあ問題なく入れるでしょう。
Second, Anon went to the UK not long after starting her 3rd year of junior high. Think about it. School starts in April. You'd have to go there by June or July, then return to enroll in the first year of high school, which would have been Anon's normal progression if she hadn't gone abroad. The difference between these scenarios is that if it's the first case where Anon went to the UK after graduating junior high, she'd actually be a year older than her classmates now. Someone might ask, is there a possibility that Anon transferred back in the latter half of the first year of high school, and the current time is the beginning of the year, making Anon's enrollment about half a year later than her peers? The answer will be revealed soon. Let's continue.
ここでやり直すんだ。
Anon meets Tomori, and we can see Tomori picking up stones. When she's immersed in her own world, her reaction to the outside world is a beat slower, or she might even ignore external information.
今日からクラスの一員になる。
All right, the answer is revealed. The Golden Week holiday is about to begin. Japan's Golden Week is from late April to early May, including Showa Day on April 29th, Constitution Day on May 3rd, Greenery Day on May 4th, and Children's Day on May 5th. This week is a continuous holiday. As we mentioned earlier, Japan's new academic year starts in April, and Golden Week is usually after the new term begins. So, if it's the same first year of high school in our first assumed scenario, Anon would be a year older than others. So, Anon and Soyo might consider an older-younger dynamic. Let's continue.
千早アノンです。家の都合で変な時期の入学ですが、よかったら仲良くしてください。よろしくお願いします。
千早さん、一番後ろの席座って。
はい。よろしく。あ、石。あ、よろしくね。
We can see the whole class applauding now, but Tamori's hands aren't moving. She's completely absorbed in playing with the stones at this moment.
では、ホームルームを始めます。
挨拶無難にまとめたけど、馴染むためにはこれくらいがいいよね。次は。
千早さん、
何？
高松智です。よろしく。
Tamori turns around and makes an effort to greet Anon, calling her Chihaya-san. We can be sure that she didn't remember Anon's name just from hearing her self-introduction, because at that time, Tamori was still happily playing with the stones. I suspect she must have read the name Anon wrote on the blackboard. So when Anon says, "Nice to meet you," she doesn't respond immediately. It's only after Anon has taken her seat and is touching her textbook that Tamori turns back for their first interaction. Actually, we can already see Tamori's special treatment of Anon here. Faced with Anon's interaction, she actively responds to Anon.
ともりちゃん、また天文部？うん。いってらっしゃい。
We can see that Tamori's interaction with ordinary classmates is very weak, usually just a nod.
一緒に食べてもいいかな？食べよう。ありがとう。
千早って名字、名前みたいで可愛いね。
かわいい？
可愛いよ。前の学校でなんて呼ばれてたの？千早すごい。千早まとまってんの？千早頭いいよね。さすが千早。
Here we can see that Anon's academic performance is very good. The difficulty of exams in China, Japan, and Korea at the junior and senior high school stages is much higher than in the UK and US at this stage. But Anon can easily get full marks every time, showing that she's the academic type, and also clearly indicating that Anon's failure in studying abroad is not due to academic issues.
そんなことないよ。アノンでいいよ。
じゃあアノンちゃん。アノンも可愛い。
When classmates address and praise you using your surname, it definitely feels distant. So Anon hopes that new classmates can call her by her first name rather than her surname.
バンドやってるの？
まだ始めたばかりだけど。
へえ。で、なんかみんなやってない？
For social purpose, Anon decides to start playing in a band.
うち結構多いかも。先輩にすごいバンドがいるから。私もたまにバイバイしたいな。その前にちゃんと弾けるようにならないと。弾きながら歌う。
Here we can see 3 points. First, Tamori's athletic ability is relatively weak. She tries to grab the magnet at the very top, but fails to reach it after several jumps. Second, Tamori should be on duty this week, cleaning up. This is the same all over the world. Cleaning up, or maybe doing some community service. The third point is the second interaction between the classmates and Tamori.
たまにバイバイしたいな。その前にちゃんと弾けるようになる。
At this point, Tamori's response is still weak. She just nods and smiles without speaking.
弾きながら歌うの難しいんだよ。
ともりちゃんはやってないと思うけど。
アノンちゃんは？
ちょっとあるけど。
そうなんだ。楽器何やってた？
一応ギターボーカルかな。
私も。
よかったら一緒にやらない？
The green-haired girl invites Anon to join the band as a vocalist. This is surprising because they already have a lead singer. We can see the shock on the red-haired girl's face. She's the current lead vocalist.
アフターグローの曲やりたいんだけど。
At here, we can see a small gesture from Anon. When she feels guilty or lacks confidence, she will touch her hair.
ギターもう一人欲しくて。
ギターということは端っこか。
Anon is a person who seeks to be at the center. She likes to be the focus of attention.
ありがとう。ちょっと考えてみる。ただいま。
Okay, back home. At this point, we can make some simple deductions about Anon's family's economic level. I'm just guessing here. Take it with a grain of salt. First, their house is a detached house, and the car is a Land Rover Range Rover, which is a mid-range luxury car. Land Rover is an imported brand in Japan comparable to domestic brands like Lexus and Infiniti. In terms of taxes and maintenance costs, imported cars are definitely higher than domestic brands. So we can roughly position her as definitely belonging to the upper middle class or above. Secondly, Anon's study abroad experience. I remember that most public high schools in the UK are not open to international students from non-EU regions. So, Anon must have attended a private high school. In the flashback in episode 5, we can see that it should be a religious boarding school. The fees for private boarding schools are very high. And at the high school stage, you basically don't have any scholarships. Even if there are scholarships, they're usually for sports stars and art prodigies. So the act of studying abroad itself is an extra expense. I estimate it to be about 40,000 to 50,000 pounds. That's at least 6 to 7 million yen per year in Japanese yen. Keep in mind that Japan's median annual income in 2023 is only 5.6 million yen. So Anon's one-year study abroad expense is equivalent to the annual income of an ordinary middle-class family. Anon's family's income range should belong to the high-income group like executives, doctors, lawyers. In terms of economic conditions, her family could definitely afford to send Anon to a school like Tsukinomori, which is for noble ladies. I'll focus on this when analyzing Soyo later. Let's continue.
疲れた。
Now let's look at Anon's room. Anon is an only child, and at least half of the second floor of this detached house is used as Anon's bedroom. I roughly estimate it to be about 50 square meters, which shows that Anon's family dotes on her. Based on the information we've collected until now, we can make a judgment about Anon. First, Anon's family is very well off, and she's a doted upon only child. Moreover, the family supports any of Anon's any ideas. It's a very open atmosphere. This is actually very rare, even if the family has enough economic power. Few children have such a large decision-making power. She can go study abroad when she wants to, and can come back to study when she doesn't adapt. In junior high, she was the student council president and an academic star. We can infer that Anon's family gives her a lot of freedom while also providing some positive guidance, not just pure indulgence. The original family plays a crucial role in shaping a child's personality. So Anon's family can be said to be one of the happiest in Maigo. This might also be why she becomes the most positive character in Maigo.
表情謹慎だ。でも友達できたし、初日としてはまずまず。
Reviewing today's performance. Later, we'll often see Anon reviewing the day's events when she's at home.
みんなバンドやってんだもんね。私もやらなきゃ。あれ？あれ？って軽音部ない。吹奏楽部とか行ってみる？ん？
She She hears piano sounds. It's after school now. Japanese schools usually end around 3 p.m., with club activities starting around 4 p.m. Next, we'll see Anon's first meeting with Sakiko. We can see that Anon doesn't go straight to the music room. She goes through the teaching building to get there. The piece Sakiko plays is Debussy's The Girl with the Flaxen Hair, and interestingly, there happens to be a girl with flaxen hair in My Go as well.
めっちゃうまいね。
Upon seeing Sakiko, she first applauds and praises her.
吹奏楽部の方？
全然普通に聞きに来ただけで。一緒にバンドやらない？
At this point, we can see that Sakiko's movements are hesitant. Sakiko is about to close the piano lid. Then Anon asks her, "Want to be in a band with me?" At this moment, Sakiko pauses her action of closing the piano lid.
あ、急にごめん。1年 A 組の千早って言うんだけど。
Moreover, she doesn't refuse Anon, but looks at her, letting her continue. This shows that at this point, Sakiko is interested in what Anon is saying.
千早さん？
アノンって呼んで。
After Anon says her name, Sakiko repeats it. Why repeat? Sakiko is recalling, trying to remember if there's a music expert named Anon.
今バンドメンバー探してて、私ギタボなんだけど、キーボードとか。
いえ。
Then Anon expresses that she wants to form a new band, just looking for new people. So Sakiko loses interest in what Anon is saying and interrupts Anon and refuses her.
あ、もうバンドやってる？
Then Anon asks again, "Do you already have a band?" Closing the piano lid.
いいえ。
The second denial is even more lonely in tone.
もうすぐ吹奏楽部の活動の時間だから、あなたも出て行った方がよろしくてよ。
At this point, we can actually see that Sakiko has a good impression of Anon, nodding to indicate, reminding her to leave, as it's almost time for the wind instrument club's activities. This sentence actually forms a corresponding relationship with Sakiko's first sentence. Are you in the wind ensemble? We can even infer that Sakiko must have experienced being asked to leave by club members when she played the piano for too long during their activity time before. That's why she keenly reminds Anon to leave soon.
よろしくてよ。
At this point, we can see this well-known foreshadowing. The tone she uses, the language she uses, is a very noble ladylike manner. We can see the change in Sakiko's language habits later. All right, this concludes Act 2.
ダメか。どうしよう。
ライブハウスの掲示板でメンバー募集してる人探すとか？
え？
近くにサークルってところあるよ。最近池袋に2号店ができたんだ。リングって言うんだけど。
へえ、行ってみようかな。そこまでガチでやりたいわけじゃないんだよな。
Anon still hasn't found band members, so her friend suggests she check the bulletin board at the live house. But Anon hesitates. Let me briefly explain the difference between a live house and a school's pop music club. A live house is a public venue specifically for performances, catering to independent musicians and bands. So its sound equipment and stage facilities are more professional. A school's pop music club is a place for club interests and hobbies, aiming to cultivate students' interests and team cooperation. Its function is for daily practice and in-school performances, definitely not open to the public. Of course, this doesn't mean the level of school music clubs is inadequate. It's not conflicting for school bands to perform at live houses. Secondly, live house performances have ticket sales, so the nature of these two is completely different. Anon now sees the band as a social tool or social method, not wanting to take it too seriously.
ともりちゃんはやってないと思うけど。
一応聞くか。
Seeing Tamori throwing away garbage, Anon's attitude is to give it a shot regardless of the outcome, going up to ask. This is the talent of a social butterfly.
あれどこ行った？
Let's consider this as an implication for now. 4 crying chicks waiting for their mother to return. Who are the 4 chicks? And who is the mother who hasn't returned?
いたいた。高松さん。いた。
転んだ。
あ、大丈夫大丈夫。
そこ。
ちょっと。ってゴミ？おーい、高松さん。おーい、ゴミ捨てといたよ。
You see, at this moment, Tamori puts down the garbage bag, or rather ignores it, then stands in front looking blankly at the bird's nest. From a psychological perspective, Tamori's selective attention is highly concentrated. In general situations, she will focus intensely on one thing but ignore others, easily immersing herself in her own field of vision. When looking at the bird's nest, she put aside the task of taking out the garbage, likely unconsciously letting go of the bag which fell. She didn't notice a thing.
高松さん？
From a psychological perspective, her task switching cost is very high. When switching from one task to another, she encounters a certain cognitive delay or efficiency loss. She notices Anon's foot is injured, rushes to get a band-aid, leaving throwing away garbage and Anon behind, running off without even greeting. So, to put it simply, Tamori is like a single-core, single-thread CPU, only able to handle one thing at a time, unable to multitask or divide her attention. So she forgot about the garbage bag, forgot Anon was there. By the time Anon finishes throwing away the garbage and slowly finds her in the astronomy club room, Tamori is still choosing a band-aid. We can imagine Tamori hurriedly went to the astronomy club, found the box of band-aids, opened it. Now, which band-aid should she use for Anon? Okay, her brain starts executing a new task of selection. And by the time Anon slowly comes up after throwing away the garbage, Tamori is still choosing. I'll have a more detailed analysis of Tamori's situation later. Let's continue for now.
どれがいい？
すご。全部絆創膏？使っていいの？ごめんね。あ、ペンギン好き。
ヒゲペンギンだ。
ヒゲ？
顔にヒゲがあるでしょ。アデリーペンギン族で J2 ペンギンもそうだよ。あ、これアデリーペンギン。ペンギンシリーズは他にもあって。
Tamori is extremely knowledgeable about penguins, excitedly introducing them to Anon.
ちょっと待って。これ言われた
高松さんもペンギン好きなの？
可愛いとは、
なんで自信なさげ？
集めてるだけだから。多分見つけるのが好きなんだと思う。
This answer is interesting. She likes the process of searching.
でもあるかも。ペンとか可愛いと無駄に買っちゃう。
Actually, many of Anon's words at this point are similar to social niceties, following along with others' interests and hobbies.
本当？ケープペンギンとマカロニペンギンとキングペンギンもあるよ。
待って待って、こんなにいらない。 わかった、もらうから。
Tamori's emotions change greatly. At this point, Anon is basically constantly comforting her. I personally only started getting into Bang Dream because of my girl, so I can't discuss content related to previous works or some Easter egg character
12
appearances.
月12日。
I apologize for that in advance.
この形状はまるでカニ星雲。
それは前の先輩。前の部長さんは最後の方。
今日は星を見た。ルンとした星空だった。ルン？
どんな星だったんだろう。
天文部って不思議ちゃんっていうか個性的な人が集まりやすいんだね。
入部する？天文部、私しかいなくて。活動報告頑張れば廃部にはならないけど、入ってくれたら嬉しい。
Here, Anon is still politely praising. But unexpectedly, Tamori directly asks, "Do you want to join?" We can see that Tamori doesn't recognize polite conversation in this kind of social situation, and she has a straightforward personality, immediately implementing any idea that comes to mind, blurting out an invitation for Anon to join the club.
考えとく。また落ち込む。
Her emotions become completely undisguised and low again. So what to do? Anon continues to comfort her.
こういう空気嫌なんだよな。でもな。このノート。懐かしい。私も小学校の頃使ってて。これ、バンドやってんじゃん。舞ちゃんたちが高松さんはバンドやってないって言ってたんだよね。歩い影って知らない曲だ。
バンドはもうやってない。
マジ？
Anon's expression here is actually very interesting. She was originally feeling sad about the lyrics, but suddenly hearing that Tamori is no longer in a band, she immediately laughs out loud. But at this point, it's also because Anon didn't see Tamori's expression, as Tamori had her back turned.
じゃあ私とやる？私ギターとボーカルやるから、それ以外なら何でもいいよ。クラスのマスコットキャラを取り込んだら絶対注目されるし。
やらない。
そっか。じゃあいいや。
バンドやってもまたダメになるから。
もう。
Here we can see why Anon's angel. There are 3 major emotional fluctuations in this conversation, all becoming very low. Giving Anon extra band-aids, but being not needed. Inviting Anon to join the club and being politely refused. And remembering the outcome of the previous band. At this point, Anon doesn't understand Tamori. They're just ordinary classmates now. But Anon is constantly trying to cheer Tamori up. I have to say, in my go, Anon is purely kind-hearted.
タモリちゃん、遊び行こう。こういう時はカラオケ行くよ。
We mentioned earlier that class ends around 3 p.m., with club activities starting at 4 p.m. The time Sakiko goes to practice piano is about half an hour. Today, just right, after Anon and Tamori's conversation, Sakiko has just finished playing the piano at this time point, standing up to leave, and happens to see the 2 people outside the window. So this is how my go gets to be really impressive. Its logic and details can withstand scrutiny. Behind Sakiko, the anime even shows the perforated acoustic panels of the music room, including when Anon first enters the music room. All right, the scene cuts to Tsukinori. Let's look at what Soyo's doing. I'll state up front, the following interpretation is my own overinterpretation. I personally like Soyo a lot too. If the interpretation doesn't match your view of Soyo's image, just consider it my pure nonsense. Okay, let's continue.
むつみちゃん、ごめんね。部活の前にちょっと会いたくて。座らない？
Soyo asks Mutsumi to sit down. Mutsumi nods but doesn't sit. Viewers who have been paying attention definitely know the dynamic between Mutsumi and Soyo. Let's set aside their emotional relationship for now and look from Mutsumi's perspective. Mutsumi coming today. She definitely knows what Soyo wants to talk about. And she knows the result of the news she brings is not good. It's like when I go to report work to my boss, knowing I've messed up the work I'm reporting on. I just entered the door. The boss asks me to sit down and talk. I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable sitting, so I can only nod but won't sit.
さきちゃんから連絡来た？そっか。私はともかく幼馴染のむつみちゃんなら返事来るかと思ったんだけどな。
Let's break down what Soyo said. On the surface, it's complaining about Sakiko be like this, not even replying to messages. We know Mutsumi definitely wouldn't suggest Sakiko not reply to messages, but pointing out here, you and Sakiko are childhood friends. How come she doesn't even reply to your messages? Doesn't the focus and expressed meaning become different? When Mutsumi hears this, she would definitely think to some extent, is there something more I can do? After all, Saki and I are childhood friends, right? Okay, let's look at Soyo's body language and what she's about to say next.
さきちゃん、今どこにいるんだろう。ちゃんと元気にしてるかな。
Actually, looking at this dialogue is fine, but when I saw Soyo turn back to look at Soyo's expression, I couldn't hold back laugh. Where is Sakiko now? I wonder if she's okay. We know Soyo definitely genuinely cares about Soyo. This sentence is definitely not an act. But saying it in this situation in front of Mutsumi, she has an ulterior motive. First, she creates an atmosphere of concern. Then she tries to evoke empathy, guiding Mutsumi to also worry about Sakiko, to do something. Especially after Soyo finishes speaking, she turns back specifically to see if Mutsumi has any reaction. Let's change the scenario. Suppose a divorced mother stands by the window saying to her daughter, I wonder if your dad has been well lately. Where is he now? And then looks at her daughter after saying it, right? That's definitely hoping the daughter will find a way. Hoping the daughter can find out new information. Seeing no reaction from Mutsumi, she sighs. Okay, let's increase the intensity a bit.
あの時、さきちゃんがバンド辞めるって言い出した時、もっとちゃんと聞いてあげればよかった。
This part is explicit. It's a bit too much, clearly blaming Mutsumi for what she said that day, to make Mutsumi feel guilty.
ごめんね、むつみちゃん。むつみちゃんのせいじゃないよ。
Seeing Mutsumi react, she immediately rushes over to hug Mutsumi. Emotion reversal. First making Mutsumi feel guilty, then comforting her. At this point, most people would subconsciously accept all support and comfort mentally and start to rely on this feeling. We know that physical contact, especially hugs, stimulates the brain to produce dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin, making people feel relaxed and comfortable. At this point, they would rely more on all reinforcement of this relationship between them. Soyo is indeed a master of gaslighting. Just kidding.
部活の後、またたきちゃんに会いに行くけど、むつみちゃんも一緒に行かない？
バレエの日だから。
そっか、習い事か？大丈夫。また前みたいに戻れるから。
But does Mutsumi really want to go back?
私に任せて。
And can she really hand it over to Soyo? At this point, Although the first episode hasn't been fully analyzed, the video is already too long. So let's pause here for now and see if anyone is interested in this series. And that concludes our analysis of the first 3 acts of My Go. This is my first attempt at creating an in-depth analysis video, and I'm curious to see how it's received. What are your thoughts on Soyo and Anan? Share in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, like and subscribe. If the response is positive, I'll work on producing the second part of this series as soon as possible. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to your feedback. See you next time, hopefully.
普通とか当たり前ってなんだろう。今手にある物差しでは全然うまく測れなくって、相手はまた吸い込んだ不安に僕はなすがまま立ち尽くして、不器用で空回って傷つくことから逃げている現実とノートで行ったり来たり慰めて、ああなんて生きづらい世界なんだろう。だけど全部僕だから、うじうじしくしく僕だから